Everything begins not in a showroom, not on a runway, but in a raw material yard that looks like someone just finished harvesting a banana farm and left the leftovers behind. In front of us are piles of banana pseudostems, the thick trunks left behind after the fruit has already been taken away. They are huge, wet, heavy, soft, and honestly, they look like the kind of thing most people would assume belongs in a compost heap. But not here. In this factory, banana stems are not waste. They are the opening act in a textile transformation, and their welcome into the system is anything but gentle. One by one, the stems are pulled onto the feeding conveyor and dragged toward the first cutting station. Industrial blades come down fast and hard, chopping the bulky stalks into manageable sections with the kind of confidence that says this machine has absolutely no time for plant drama. The chopped pieces roll forward into the first crushing and peeling unit. At this stage, the factory is not interested in beauty, softness, elegance, or anything remotely feminine. The only mission is to open the stem, strip away the excess, and expose the long natural fibers hidden inside. The rollers spin with a heavy mechanical growl. The wet pulp is flattened, plant juice and sap spill into collection trays below, and the soft, fleshy layers begin to separate from the fiber structure. It feels almost like the banana plant is being forced to confess all of its secrets at once. Slowly, the valuable fibers begin to appear. They are not clean. They are not pretty. They are not refined. But they are there, long and surprisingly tough, waiting to be rescued from all the mush around them. This is where the transformation starts to get satisfying. Just a few moments ago, this looked like a pile of agricultural leftovers that nobody would miss. Now, the first strands of usable material are emerging. Still messy, still rough, still looking like they had a bad day in a storm, but clearly holding the potential to become something much more. The whole system operates like a strict material detective. If it is pulp, push it aside. If it is outer sheath, strip it away. If it is sludge, send it to waste handling. Only the valuable fiber moves forward. Sensors regulate feed speed, cutting depth, and roller pressure, so the stems are processed consistently rather than with that terrifying, let's just see what happens method that factories generally try to avoid. And this is where banana stems reveal their personality. They look soft and watery from the outside, but once they hit the machines, they turn out to be stubborn, sticky, fibrous, and full of sap. They do not politely volunteer to become fabric. The machinery has to physically force the process forward. That clash between wet, unruly plant matter and exact mechanical control is what makes this opening section so visually satisfying. At the end of the preliminary treatment line, the conveyor finally releases clumps of raw banana fiber. They are pale yellow, frizzy, tangled, and still completely wild. If you put them next to a finished bra or a pair of underwear, almost nobody would believe they belong in the same story. And that is exactly why the reveal works so well. A great industrial transformation always starts from a point that feels almost impossible. The factory does not bother trying to make the banana stem look attractive at this stage. It lets it enter the line as exactly what it is: wet, rough, sticky, and a little difficult. Because only a few steps later, it will be pushed into the next phase, where high-pressure water, stripping rollers, and deep cleaning systems will perform the next brutal but necessary act. They are about to wash the "I am a plant" out of it. The raw fiber bundles from the first section barely get a chance to breathe before they are pulled into the cleaning zone. And this is where water stops behaving like gentle rain and starts acting like a weapon. Here, it is pressurized, focused, and fired at the material with the attitude of something that is deeply offended by plant sap and intends to remove every last trace of it. Each bundle passes under powerful spray jets that blast the surface from multiple angles. Sticky sap, soft tissue residue, soil, bits of pulp, and plant debris are all hammered loose. The impact is sharp and loud. Foam bursts upward. Dirty runoff pours below into collection channels. It is the kind of sequence that is weirdly addictive to watch, because it feels like years of natural mess are being erased in seconds. But washing alone is not enough. Once the pressure rinse has stripped off the loose contamination, the material moves into the fiber stripping system. This is where the long, usable strands are separated more clearly from the remaining rough mass. Toothed rollers, combing bars, and controlled tension work together to pull, tease, align, and separate the fibers. On the outside, the machine looks calm and professional. On the inside, it is basically saying, if you are a good fiber, congratulations, you may proceed. If you are just leftover plant mush, this is where we part ways. With each pass, the bundles become more organized, less sticky, less lumpy, less like something dragged in from a field after bad weather. The strands grow longer, cleaner, and more distinct. Most importantly, they begin to show real mechanical promise, tensile strength, flexibility, and the ability to survive the next steps without falling apart every 5 minutes. Behind the scenes, the factory's water recovery and filtration system works continuously. Dirty water is not simply dumped and forgotten. It is collected, filtered, treated, and reused where appropriate. That matters because any factory claiming sustainability while casually turning its wastewater into a swampy disaster would be telling a very awkward kind of lie. After washing and stripping, the fibers move to an inspection station. Industrial cameras scan for consistency. Moisture sensors monitor the remaining water content. Technicians perform sample checks by hand to confirm whether the material is clean enough to proceed. Because if too much sap or residue is left behind, the next stages become a nightmare. It is the factory version of trying to cook with vegetables you forgot to wash properly. Technically possible, but you are creating suffering for whoever comes next. At this point, the banana fibers are now visibly long, coarse, and separated into recognizable bundles. They look a bit like the hair of an agricultural deity who just survived a giant industrial hair straightener. But appearances can be misleading. They are still rough, still stiff, still very, very plant-like. If someone tried to turn them straight into underwear at this stage, the result would probably feel less like comfort and more like a regrettable life choice. That is why the line does not stop at "we got the fibers out." A modern textile factory is not impressed that easily. What it wants is material that is clean, softened, brightened, stabilized, and ready to enter the world of fabric that actually touches human skin. In other words, the banana stem has escaped being discarded in the field, only to be sent immediately into an even tougher training program: washing, treatment, whitening, softening, and controlled drying. From here on, it will not just be clean. It will begin to look civilized. After cleaning and stripping, the banana fiber enters what could best be described as a mandatory spa retreat. Not the luxurious kind with candles and cucumber water, obviously. This is an industrial version, where the goal is to take a coarse, stiff natural fiber and teach it how to behave like a serious textile material. The cleaned bundles move through a sequence of wet treatment systems designed to remove the components that make the fiber too rigid, too sticky, too dull in color, and too unpleasant against the skin. A series of treatment baths handle deep washing, scouring, partial brightening, neutralization, rinsing, softening, and stabilization. In simple terms, this is the stage where banana fiber starts losing the attitude of "I was just standing in a farm an hour ago," and begins learning the manners required for modern textile production. Inside the tanks, the fiber rotates, sinks, rises, and turns through the treatment liquor as if it is seriously reconsidering its life choices. Temperature, chemical concentration, residence time, and agitation are all tightly controlled. Too little treatment, and the fiber remains harsh and stubborn. Too much, and the fiber gets weakened. Weak fiber leads to broken yarn. Broken yarn leads to angry spinning machines. Angry spinning machines lead to angry technicians. And nobody wants that. After the wet treatments, the fiber is pressed to remove excess water and sent into the drying system. Rollers squeeze out the moisture, Then warm, controlled air moves through the material until it reaches a stable moisture level. This is a particularly satisfying visual sequence. The treated fiber gradually becomes lighter, fluffier, cleaner, and less rigid. It no longer looks like the remains of a chopped-up plant. It begins to resemble a textile raw material with real purpose. In some production lines designed for close-to-skin garments, this is also the stage where blending may be considered. Banana fiber brings strength, breathability, and the sustainability story of agricultural waste recovery. But underwear is a demanding product. It needs softness, comfort, drape, and often stretch. So modern factories may blend banana-based fiber with supportive fibers to improve wearability and machine performance. That is not cheating. That is manufacturing intelligence. Making something natural is admirable. Making something people actually want to wear every day is even smarter. Once softened and dried, the fiber moves to the opening and carding stage. Machines tease apart the bundles, remove additional short fragments, and align the better fibers into a more even web ready for spinning. From an overhead angle, this part is almost hypnotic. Pale, airy fiber is opened, spread, gathered, and guided forward in smooth sheets like clouds being organized by engineers with very strict deadlines. This is where the emotional tone of the whole script starts to shift. In the beginning, we were looking at heavy, wet banana stems that seemed destined for the trash. Now, the material is light, bright, clean, and beginning to speak the visual language of the textile industry. It is not yarn yet. It is not fabric yet. It is definitely not elegant lingerie yet. But it has crossed the most important threshold of all. It is no longer agricultural waste. It is now a legitimate textile raw material. And that matters, because the next section is where the factory stops preparing the material and starts giving it its new identity. The softened fiber is about to be stretched, drafted, twisted, and transformed into strong, continuous yarn, then dyed into refined modern colors that make it almost impossible to remember it ever started life as a wet banana stem. If the previous sections were about rescue and rehabilitation, this is where the material receives its official passport into the textile world. The opened and softened fiber moves into spinning, where precision becomes everything. At this stage, even small inconsistencies can trigger trouble across the line, so the machinery becomes even less forgiving. The fiber first passes through more refined carding and alignment systems. Short fragments are removed. The usable fibers are straightened, parallelized, and formed into slivers. Those slivers are then fed into drafting systems that stretch them thinner and thinner, drawing out the mass while maintaining continuity. Finally, twist is applied, turning the loose fibrous structure into real yarn. Watching this happen is strangely thrilling. It feels like witnessing a cloud being transformed into a nerve, finer, longer, more organized, and suddenly full of purpose. The spinning frames fill cones one by one with even, continuous yarn. This is the point where the achievement becomes impossible to ignore. The factory is no longer processing waste. It is producing a standardized textile intermediate that can actually run on industrial knitting or weaving equipment. That is a massive leap, and it happens through mechanical discipline rather than fantasy. Then comes the dyeing section, and visually this is where the whole documentary shifts from rugged industrial transformation into something much more seductive. Cones or packages of yarn enter the dyeing system, either in batches or continuous flow, depending on the production configuration. Dye solutions are prepared automatically according to formula, pumped into vessels, and controlled by time, temperature, and liquor ratio. There is no close enough attitude here. Beige cannot accidentally become pink. Lavender cannot turn into a color best described as laundry disappointment. Modern factories take shade consistency very seriously. The yarn emerges in refined, understated tones perfect for intimate apparel: nude, ivory, blush pink, soft gray, black, muted lavender, and warm neutrals. If you did not know its origin, you would never guess these elegant cones began as chopped banana stems dripping plant sap into a metal trough. That contrast is what makes this part so satisfying. The material has not merely been cleaned up. It has been socially promoted. After dyeing comes drying, cooling, and quality control. The yarn is checked for shade uniformity, twist balance, strength, and color fastness. Anything that does not meet the standard is rejected, because intimate wear has very little patience for mediocrity. Nobody wants a beautiful garment that falls apart, fades, or behaves like it is going through an emotional breakdown after one wash. Depending on the final product requirements, this stage may also involve combining the banana-based yarn with complementary yarns that provide stretch or surface softness. And that is one of the most important truths in modern manufacturing. The goal is not to prove ideological purity. The goal is to build a product that works beautifully in real life, on real bodies, through real use. When the finished yarn cones are lined up on the racks, the emotional rhythm of the story changes again. They no longer look like something in progress. They look ready. Each cone is now a promise that the next machines will turn these threads into fabric, soft, breathable, stable, and increasingly close to the final garment. From banana stem to yarn is already a satisfying journey. But the final section is where the real payoff arrives, because now the material is about to become one of the most demanding everyday products in the textile world. Something delicate, comfortable, close to the skin, and finished with remarkable precision. The dyed yarn cones move into the knitting or weaving area, where the factory finally enters the stage most viewers have been waiting for. This is where the material stops being a promise and starts becoming a recognizable product. Depending on the design, the yarn may be knitted into soft, breathable, flexible fabric structures suitable for different parts of the garment. The body panels, lining sections, side bands, support zones, or trim elements. Hundreds of needles and synchronized mechanisms move up and down with hypnotic speed, looping thread into fabric with mechanical rhythm so smooth it almost feels like the machines are putting on a performance. The fabric comes off the machine looking nothing like banana stem anymore. Its surface is even, soft, and controlled. It drapes better, feels lighter, and begins to resemble the kind of textile people actually want touching their skin. Inspection cameras scan continuously for defects such as streaks, holes, missed loops, or structural inconsistencies. Any flaw is marked immediately, because intimate apparel is not a category where people are especially forgiving. No one wants to buy a beautiful bra or a pair of underwear only to discover one panel decided to improvise artistically during production. After knitting comes finishing. The fabric may be relaxed, heat set, softened, stabilized, or otherwise treated to make sure its size, hand feel, and surface behavior are ready for conversion. This is another crucial modern manufacturing principle. Sustainability is not only about using better raw materials. It is also about reducing waste, preventing errors, and making sure every meter of fabric performs the way it should. A factory cannot really brag about being green if half its output ends up as unusable offcuts because someone got lazy with process control. Then comes cutting, and this is a sequence that is always visually satisfying. Layers of fabric are spread out flat, secured, and guided into automated cutting systems. In some lines, laser cutting is used for high precision and clean edge control. In others, advanced digital cutting heads follow pattern files with incredible accuracy. Bra cups, straps, bands, gusset panels, side wings, and underwear pieces all appear one after another with exact, smooth curves. There is no wobbly hand-cut uncertainty here. The entire point is precision. The cut components move into assembly. Automated handling systems feed pieces into specialized sewing stations. Skilled workers oversee critical joining steps, while support machinery handles repetitive seams with speed and consistency. Straps are attached. Closures are fitted. Side panels are joined. linings are inserted, edge finishing is completed. This is one of the best parts of the whole story because it proves that a modern factory is not a place where humans disappear. Machines handle repetition, speed, and exact motion. Human technicians step in where judgment, balance, and refined finishing still matter. You could say the robots manage the parts that must not be wrong, while the people manage the parts that must not feel lifeless. The nearly finished garments then pass through final inspection. Stretch recovery, seam integrity, symmetry, color consistency, trim quality, label placement, and sizing are all checked. Only the approved pieces move on to folding and packaging. One by one, the finished products are stacked neatly, sealed, packed, and sent down the conveyor in clean rows under bright factory lights. And this is where the emotional payoff lands completely. What began as a thick banana stem left behind after harvest has now passed through chopping, crushing, washing, stripping, softening, brightening, drying, opening, spinning, dyeing, knitting, cutting, assembling, and inspection to become a refined, intimate garment ready for real-world use. That is what makes this production line so fascinating that IT is not just making underwear. IT is telling a very modern industrial story. Something once dismissed as agricultural waste can, through technology, discipline, and smart design, re-enter daily life as a product that is elegant, functional, and surprisingly beautiful. And honestly, that is a much more exciting fate than slowly collapsing in a field after harvest.